It was raunchy, it was rebellious, and it made an absolute fortune. Porky's arrived in 1981 and became one of the highest-grossing comedies in Canadian film history almost overnight. But what happened to cast when the cameras packed up and the laughter faded? Let's find out. Number 1, we have Dan Monahan as Peewee. The heart and soul of the entire Porky's franchise, Peewee Morris was the lovably desperate, perpetually optimistic teenager that audiences immediately adopted as their own. And Dan Monahan was 25 years old when he made that character impossible to forget. His comic timing felt completely natural rather than performed, which is exactly why Peewee worked so well as the emotional anchor of the whole film. Now 70 years old in 2026, he married Sharon Monahan in 1982, right in the immediate aftermath of the film's massive success. And the two have remained together ever since, raising one daughter together. When the Hollywood offers started drying up in the late 1990s, he made a clean and deliberate exit from the spotlight, stepping away to focus entirely on his family and private business ventures, a transition he has never publicly regretted for a single moment. Number 2, we have Nancy Parsons as Beulah Balbricker. If Porky's has one truly iconic scene, and it has several, the one involving Coach Balbricker and a very unusual identification request might be the most unforgettable of all. Nancy Parsons was 38 years old when she played the stern, relentlessly determined gym teacher, bringing a commitment to the role that elevated what could have been a simple caricature into something genuinely memorable. What most audiences never knew was that behind the severity of Balbricker was a warmly regarded, classically trained stage actress, who colleagues consistently described as one of the kindest people on the entire set. In her personal life, she had been married to Alan S. Melman from 1970 to 1980, and the two had 2 daughters together before the marriage ended. She never remarried. Nancy Parsons passed away on January 5, 2001, at just 58 years old, after a long battle with cancer. Far too soon for someone with that much genuine talent still left to offer. Number 3, we have Alex Karras as Sheriff Wallace. Before he ever set foot on a film set, Alex Karras was already a genuine American legend, one of the most feared defensive tackles the NFL ever produced during his years with the Detroit Lions. He was 45 years old when Porky's was filmed, and the natural physical authority he carried from decades of professional football made Sheriff Wallace feel completely believable without a single moment of overacting. Now gone from us since 2012, his personal life contained one of the film's most quietly romantic footnotes. He fell in love with his Porky's co-star Susan Clark during production, married her in 1980, and the two became one of the most beloved real-life couples of 1980s television through their work together on Webster. His story carries real weight beyond the comedy, although he became a lead plaintiff in a landmark lawsuit against the NFL over head injuries and the dementia he suffered from in his final years, helping open a conversation the league had long tried to avoid. Alex Karras passed away on October 10, 2012, at the age of 77. Number 4, we have Kaki Hunter as Wendy. One of the most grounded and believable female performances in the entire film, Wendy was the kind of character who made the story feel like it actually had a soul beneath the outrageous comedy. And Kaki Hunter was 25 years old when she delivered that with a naturalness that stood out even in a cast full of strong performances. Now 70 years old in 2026, what she did with her life after Hollywood is genuinely one of the most fascinating second acts anyone in this entire cast has lived. In 1991, she walked away from the industry entirely, publicly stating she had grown exhausted by its relentless focus on physical appearance over actual craft. She relocated to Utah, trained as a whitewater rafting instructor, and became a pioneering figure in sustainable building, specifically constructing cob houses, an ancient building method she helped bring into modern practice. Her personal life has been kept completely private throughout all of it, with no public record of relationships or marriage, a wall of privacy she has maintained as deliberately as her extraordinary post-Hollywood reinvention. Number 5, we have Chuck Mitchell as Porky, the villain of the piece, the sleazy, bullying nightclub owner who gives the film its entire reason for existing, needed someone who could make audiences genuinely want to see him get what was coming. Chuck Mitchell was 52 years old during filming, a veteran character actor who had spent decades playing exactly the kind of heavy that stories like this require. And he brought a sweaty, self-satisfied menace to Porky that made the boy's eventual revenge feel completely earned. Despite that on-screen sliminess, he was remembered by castmates as a warm, well-liked professional whose long experience made him a stabilizing presence on a set full of much younger performers. In his personal life, he was married to Jeanette Mitchell for many years, a partnership that lasted right through until the end. Chuck Mitchell passed away on June 22, 1992, at just 63 years old, from liver failure. Gone before the cult status his most famous role would eventually achieve had fully taken hold. Number 6, we have Susan Clark as Cherry Forever. Cherry Forever was the kind of role that required a performer with genuine comedic range and absolutely no vanity. And Susan Clark was 38 years old when she delivered both in abundance. A highly respected Canadian actress who had already won an Emmy Award for her dramatic work in Babe back in 1975, her willingness to throw herself into Porky's anarchic comedy spoke to a confidence and playfulness that purely dramatic actresses rarely bring to material like this. Now 83 years old in 2026, her personal life is inseparable from the story of the film itself. She and her co-star Alex Karras fell in love during production, married in 1980, and went on to star together in the beloved sitcom Webster, becoming one of the most genuinely adored couples American television produced in that entire decade. They remained completely devoted to each other until his death in 2012, a love story that began on a raucous comedy set and lasted 32 years. Number 7, we have Scott Colomby as Brian Schwartz. The most grounded and morally centered of the main group of boys, Brian Schwartz gave the film an emotional anchor that kept the comedy from floating entirely off into chaos. And Scott Colomby was 28 years old when he played that role with a quiet intelligence that made Brian feel genuinely real. Now 73 years old in 2026, his off-screen romantic life in those early Hollywood years was considerably more eventful than his characters. He was in a relationship with actress Valerie Bertinelli during that period, one of the most recognizable faces on American television at the time, before later dating Cindy Morgan, his co-star from Caddyshack. Those high-profile connections placed him firmly within one of Hollywood's most socially active circles during the early 1980s, even as his own public profile remained considerably quieter than the people surrounding him. In the years since, he has stepped almost entirely out of the spotlight, a private chapter he has maintained with complete consistency. Number 8, we have Boyd Gaines as Coach Brackett. Coach Brackett was the straight-laced, a perpetually exasperated authority figure caught between the boys' chaos and Balbricker's obsessions. And Boyd Gaines played that thankless middle ground with a comic restraint that made every scene he shared with Nancy Parsons genuinely funny. He was 27 years old during filming, already developing the theatrical instincts that would eventually take him somewhere very few actors in this cast ever reached. Now, 72 years old in 2026, his post-Porky story is one of the most remarkable reinventions connected to this film. He walked away from Hollywood and built one of the most decorated stage careers in American theater, winning 4 Tony Awards across his Broadway work. That's not a consolation prize for a film career that didn't pan out. That's a genuine artistic achievement by any standard. In his personal life, he married actress Kathleen McNenny, and the two have one daughter named Leslie together, a quiet family life built entirely around serious craft. Number 9, we have Wyatt Knight as Tommy. Tommy Turner was the cool, confident ringleader of the group's wildest schemes, the one who always seemed most certain everything would work out. And Wyatt Knight was 26 years old when he played that effortless swagger with a naturalness that made Tommy one of the film's most immediately likable characters. The story of what happened to him after Porky's is one of the most heartbreaking connected to this entire cast. In his personal life, he was married to Sylvina Knight and had 2 children from a previous marriage, a family he clearly loved and tried to protect even as his health deteriorated catastrophically. He was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a battle that was as brutal and prolonged as the disease always is at that stage. After a long and agonizing fight that left him in severe pain, Wyatt Knight passed away on October 25, 2011, at just 56 years old from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A devastating end to a life that deserved so many more years than it received. Number 10, we have Mark Herrier as Billy. Billy was the loyal, warm-hearted friend at the center of the group, the one whose decency kept the whole ensemble from tipping too far into pure anarchy. And Mark Herrier brought a genuinely likable sincerity to the role at 26 years old that made Billy one of the most quietly essential characters in the film. Now 71 years old in 2026, The career he built after Porky's took a turn that most of his castmates never attempted. He moved behind the camera and became a director, most notably helming the 1991 horror comedy Popcorn, a film that developed its own devoted cult following entirely separate from the Porky's franchise. In his personal life, he married Rebecca Marie Gonzalez in 1982, right in the immediate wake of the film's enormous success, and the two have raised 2 children together. A stable, grounded family chapter built quietly alongside a career that kept evolving long after most people assumed it had peaked. Number 11. We have Tony Ganios as Meat. The nickname says everything about the character. And Tony Ganios was just 21 years old when he played the lovably dim, enormous-hearted Meat with a physical comedy and warmth that made him an instant fan favorite from the moment the film was released. His connection to the Porky's cult community never faded across the decades that followed, and he remained a beloved figure at conventions and fan events right up until the very end. In his personal life, he was engaged to Amanda Serrano Ganios at the time of his passing, a relationship those close to him described as a genuinely happy chapter in his later years. Tony Ganios passed away on February 18, 2024, at just 64 years old, from heart failure following surgery for a spinal cord infection. One of the most recent and unexpected losses this cast has suffered, arriving suddenly and without warning, and hitting the cult film community with a grief that was felt immediately and widely. Number 12. We have Kim Cattrall as Honeywell. Long before Samantha Jones made her one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, Kim Cattrall was 24 years old and playing the free-spirited gym teacher, Miss Honeywell, in what would become one of the most commercially successful comedies of its entire era. The role showed a fearlessness and comedic confidence that her later work only confirmed. This was never an actress who needed the material to be safe in order to commit completely. Now 69 years old in 2026, her personal life moved through 3 marriages, the most publicly discussed being her relationship with Mark Levinson, which lasted from 1998 to 2004. Since 2016, she has been in a relationship with BBC employee Russell Thomas, a quieter and more private chapter than anything that came before it. The controversy that has followed her most persistently has nothing to do with Porkys. Her long-running and very public feud with Sex and the City co-star Sarah Jessica Parker became one of Hollywood's most discussed behind-the-scenes conflicts, ultimately resulting in her refusal to appear in a 3rd film and a carefully negotiated cameo in the sequel series And Just Like That, a saga that generated more headlines than almost anything else she ever did on screen. Number 13, we have Roger Wilson as Mickey. Mickey was the most romantically driven of the group, the one for whom the whole Porky's adventure carried genuine emotional stakes beyond the pranks. And Roger Wilson was 24 years old when he played that longing with a sincerity that gave the film some of its more grounded moments. Now, 69 years old in 2026, see his life after Porky's moved through some genuinely extraordinary territory. In his personal life, he had high-profile relationships with supermodel Christy Turlington and actress Elizabeth Berkley during his more visible Hollywood years, before later marrying Sean Casey. The controversy that attached itself most publicly to his name came in 2000, when he filed a $40 million lawsuit against Leonardo DiCaprio, alleging that DiCaprio had encouraged friends to assault him during a dispute connected to his relationship with Berkley. The case generated enormous tabloid coverage and placed Wilson's name in headlines that had nothing to do with anything he had filmed. A surreal chapter in a post-Porky's life that nobody could have predicted from watching him on screen. Number 14, we have Cyril O'Reilly as Tim Cavanaugh. The youngest of the main group on screen, Tim Cavanaugh was the eager, slightly less experienced member of the gang. And Cyril O'Reilly was just 22 years old during filming, making him one of the genuinely youngest cast members in the entire production. That youth translated naturally into a performance that felt completely unforced, exactly what the role required. Now 67 years old in 2026, he went on to build a steady and consistent career across film and television throughout the 1980s and 1990s, most notably appearing in the acclaimed Vietnam War series Tour of Duty, a dramatic shift in tone from Porky's that demonstrated a versatility the comedy had barely hinted at. His personal life has been kept in complete privacy throughout his entire career. No documented relationships, no public record of marriage or partnership, a discretion he has maintained just as consistently as his professional work across 4 decades of the industry.